Went in there and I saw Divine there.
Wow, did you really?
Yeah, and both those two shows, which were kind of within a few months of each other, they were real like epiphanies for me. And then he did Bow Wow Wow, and then he did Buffalo Girls, which is very important in hip hop.
100%.
Blowing up.
100%.
And it wasn't all like 18-year-old speed freaks being angry on council estates. It was like classical music, disco. I saw a clip from Top of the Pops, and that's like sort of mind-boggling avant-garde music on a tea time on a Thursday evening on mainstream TV. They just wouldn't do that now. Would like other life forms on another planet, would they have music? I
think so. You've only got to watch films like Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Yeah.
And when it with
the tuba noise. So it's a book about Jay Dilla and his...
I need to get that.
It's a mate called Dilla Time. I have ADHD, like really next level. And I didn't know this till a couple of years ago, because now more adults are getting diagnosed. The psychiatrist was nearly crying, and he launched that club Nag Nag Nag, which was like the first sort of London electro clash thing, which was really exciting.
But these clubs are more glammed up, weren't they?
Open air, like dancing when the sun comes up. And I didn't even have a keyboard stand. I just had my gear on the stage, on the ground.
Really? So you had to kneel down and then...
Yeah, I was kneeling on the floor.
Wow.
And people sort of stepping over and going, "What are you doing?" I lost the floppy disk and I was going round.
Did you have a
looking
copy?
for this
Do you have a copy of the floppy disk?
No.
You're joking.
And I found it on the floor in the Star Best club in the world, and then playing at the first open air rave, which was Biology, and playing at NRG, the first Energy party was in the film studio.
What was that like?
It was just amazing.
Wow.
I mean, and it was mental what we were doing. Sometimes, you know, we'd have people throwing pint glasses at us, and a gig in Hackney once, someone actually swang a chair at my head.
So, lights, camera, action. On this week's show, I have someone who had a #1 song back in the day and was in collaboration with Seal with their wicked chart hit called Killer. This is someone who lives and breathes music, and as well as being a wicked record producer, he's also a DJ, musician and a singer. I'm excited to say we have the hugely talented, the one and the only, the keyboard whiz kid in the back. We got ADAMSKI in the cab.
Thank you. You can't really say kid anymore.
I know.
Keyboard whiz geriatric.
Brilliant.
Well, yeah. I didn't call myself a whiz or anything.
I remember it because it was on your NRG.
No, they used to say keyboard wizard.
Keyboard wizards,
and
yeah.
on all the rave flyers, even ones I wasn't playing at, I'd get handed flyers outside the clubs, and I'd be like, I'm on this flyer and I've never heard of these people or this organisation. And it was, I guess, it's sort of flattering in one way that everyone, you know, thinks they're going to sell more tickets because I'm on their flyer, even though I'm not playing. But yeah, it's being exploited in another way. And I was a bit like, you know, a push me, pull you, two-headed llama. What the fuck? Like, when to be flattered or when to be like, no, I'm violated, you know. But anyway, I guess all that gave me sort of PR, and it, like, when I started playing in the clubs in London as ADAMSKI in 1989, so I was doing other stuff before that. People could never get my name right. It was like Rumpelstiltskin. They'd be like, "Oh, are you that ADAMSKI bloke?"
Oh, really?
Oh, we've got ADAMSKI and ADAMSKI, and no one could ever get my name right. It was really funny. That's
we was all saying ADAMSKI because that kind of, it had that kind of like hip hop kind of feel to it, you know, like ski, ADAMSKI, and you know that. Yeah,
because there was that thing, wasn't there? The like Steinski and Fresh Ski.
Exactly.
The New York. It was a sort of New York thing, but I got it from my manager at the time. He went to a UFO convention, and there was a guy called George ADAMSKI talking, or maybe I don't know if he was. But basically, my manager had this cassette, and I just heard that name, and I thought
that sounds cool.
Yeah,
and because your name's Adam.
Yeah, so it's sort of a remix of my own name.
Wow.
But then I sort of didn't like it because, I find it a bit embarrassing now.
No, I know. And
you have such a name. I don't like going to a club and going, my name's ADAMSKI. You know, if people put me on the door on the guest list,
you put it as Adam.
I really hope they have put Adam.
Yeah.
And they go, we can't see an Adam on here. And I have to go, it's ADAMSKI. I don't know why. I just find it embarrassing.
Brilliant.
Well,
but now, Adam, listen. What can I say? It's an absolute honour to have you in the cab. And we're going to take a little trip down memory lane, which I can't wait to chat about. You know, your sort of beginnings, and you know a bit about your music career. It's going to be absolutely incredible. So the first question I always kick it off with is like, whereabouts are you from, and what was it like growing up? You know, as a young Adam, as a young kid.
Well, I'm from a small town in the New Forest, and so I grew up quite provincial, not like urban at all, you know, 100 miles from London.
Yeah.
I loved coming up to London. It was like
such a buzz.
So exciting when I was a kid. You know, I had an auntie in London and remember going to see her, and when I was 5 and saw a teddy boy, like, because this would have been the early 70s when there was the big teddy boy revival, and I saw this teddy boy in like a flamingo pink drape suit walking down my auntie's road, and I just thought, that's amazing. I moved up here when I was 17, like as soon as I could, really.
So what year did you move to London?
I think it was 85. Well, I left school in 84 when I was 16. And yeah, it must have been 85. Yeah.
So you was kind of up here when like it was still there was still some new romantics still around. It was just after that kind of era, wasn't it? But
yeah, I was more like post-punk squat scene, sort of that sort of thing, or a lot of going to pubs. I couldn't get served in a pub.
Well, because you looked too young.
Yeah, I looked so young.
But when you first moved to London, I mean, was you going like clubbing back in like 1985 and 86?
No, not really. Well, I mean, I started going to the Camden Palace, which is now Coco, and I'd go and see Suicide. It's not really a band, it's just two blokes. I saw Suicide in Camden Palace, so I was getting in somehow. I was 17, I don't know, maybe I put on a stick-on beard. I can't remember, but I definitely went in there and I saw Divine there.
Wow, did you really?
Yeah, and both those two shows, which were kind of within a few months of each other, they were real like epiphanies for me, because, you know, Suicide was just a guy and a keyboard who was really static. Martin Rev, the keyboard player, didn't even move. He'd just stand there and like stare with his massive great big glasses, and they could hold you. They didn't need a sweaty drummer or like some, you know, a guitarist with a big pack package, and like it was just so brilliant. Like I've been like really into bands, and I've been in bands with drummers, and I've played guitar in bands, I've been the singer in bands, I've been the keyboard player in band, and I like that stuff, but not as much as I've always just loved electronic stuff more. And
you love that synth sound.
Yeah, I love the automated mechanicals, and Martin Rev of Suicide. I didn't know till I read a biography about him, because basically he'd just stand and play 2 notes for 15 minutes, just Rocket USA, and like so minimal. And he was actually a virtuoso jazz musician. He, used to study manuscripts or whatever. He'd sit and apparently, he studied with people in Miles Davis's band, like top-notch, highbrow jazz people. But he decided what he wanted to do and what he wanted to hear was a sped up drum machine with loads of distortion and 2 notes, and I love it when people sort of have this attitude, oh, they can't even play properly, or it's not real. Well, it's that sort of over, but in the 80s there was a lot of, and even like, it's not real music, you just press a couple of buttons. I mean, for me, music's just noise coming out of a hole.
and it doesn't matter how you make it, as long as it sounds decent.
Yeah.
But I was going to say, was you kind of, back in the day, was you kind of self-taught on the as a pianist? Because you was amazing on the keyboard.
Well, I'm not really that good at playing. I'm 3-finger chancer. Well, I think I got some reviewer called me that, and I thought, yeah, all right. But what happened was I was self-taught on the guitar. I had a little chord book that learnt to play, She'll Be Coming Round the Mountain, Green Sleeves, and stuff like that. And then, quite basic. And then I pick up riffs from my older brother. He was at secondary school, so I was at junior school, so he was in bands that were learning like songs by the Damned or Thin Lizzy or whatever was around in the sort of late 70s, and I taught myself, but I get riffs and bits and bobs off him. Learning an instrument without a teacher, you just pick up bits from mates or wherever you can. And I made this record when I was a little kid.
Was when you was in Stupid Babes? Yeah, how old was you? 11 or something?
Stupid Babies. Yeah, I was 11, and I was a big fan of punk rock and John Peel radio show, which wasn't just punk rock. He played very eclectic things, the odd, and I'd listen to him under my pillow, my little transistor radio. I progressed from Radio Luxembourg, which was all sort of ABBA and mainstream, to then learning about John Peel, probably from my older brother at big school. Said, oh wow, there's this DJ on Radio 1, Monday to Thursday. And I loved punk and the sort of fallout of it, and it back then, when you're in a band, you send cassettes to record labels, and that's what I did. And I couldn't really join in with my brother's teenage stuff. They don't want some 11-year-old irritating little twat, in their band or something, playing proper punk rock or heavy metal or glam rock or whatever they were doing. So I just got my little brother, who was 5, and said, "Sing this." And I took the melody off. There was an advert for Bubblicious Bubblegum, and I nicked the melody. I've always been a plagiarist, and it's like, as my life's gone on, like people that I really admire, like David Bowie or Oscar Wilde, or Zig Zig Sputnik, who really inspired me, because they just sort of, I went to some of their early gigs when I first moved here, so I kind of loved it, something exciting. And I admire, say, like they condone plagiarism, you know. Oscar Wilde said, you know, talent borrows, genius steals. Not that I'm saying I'm a genius, but he's a super important literary, you know, idol. He was a genius, very culturally important and person. And David Bowie, obviously. I mean, he was just, you know, Starman, which, you know, was his first sort of, apart from Space Oddity, it was his first proper breakout hit, when it, you know, he had so many like attempts at breaking through to the, you know,
to the mainstream,
to the top of the pops world and stuff. And Starman, he nicked the melody off Somewhere Over the Rainbow from The Wizard of Oz.
Did he really? I didn't know that.
And he just would say that, and he would like emulate Lou Reed for a song, or emulate Iggy Pop, or anything. He said himself, and he's, you know, you can find him on YouTube talking about that. And I thought, yeah. So anyway, I plagiarised the melody from the Bubblicious advert.
Wow.
I took the lyrics from IBIZA comic, which I was 11, I read comics, and there was this character called Baby Crockett, and he was like, they were like, "Oh, we've got to get you a babysitter," and he was like, "Me hates babysitters." And that was the lyric. I said to my little brother, who was 5, right, it's babysitters, instead of Bubblicious, it was babysitters. Me hates babysitters. And it was, and then I nicked an instrumental break from Rock Around the Clock, but I played it on a kazoo while I was playing my toy guitar. and I sent the cassette off. I thought, that's what you do. Adam, how did you make it though? I mean, because it's not like there's laptops now where you can press buttons and sample this, sample that. It was a totally different world back then. So how did you make the tune? Well, I just recorded it straight onto a little mono cassette player that I got for Christmas, like from Tesco. Wow. Don't remember the brand name, but Tesco used to sell these little things, and I just recorded it onto there in my bedroom with my little brother in our pyjamas one Saturday morning before Mum and Dad got up, and I sent the cassette off, sort of not really expecting anything, but that's what it seemed like you do. I think they used to get inundated with cassettes,
thousands of cassettes,
especially after punk, which was like a lot about the DIY, anyone can do it ethic, and I just thought, and I really loved like what Malcolm McLaren did. He was my, you know, everyone had a favourite Sex Pistol, like Sid Vicious or Johnny Rotten or whatever, and but my favourite one, I don't know why or how I sort of knew, because I was a little kid. I mean, I must have just been really precocious, or I don't know why, but I just thought Malcolm McLaren. And then he did Bow Wow Wow, and then he did Buffalo Girls, which is very important in hip hop.
100%.
blowing up.
100%.
That was the first record a lot of people heard that was using scratching and elements of other people's records blatantly, bits of other.
And also, Adam, not just that, you was also seeing the beginnings of like breaking and like graffiti art as well.
Yeah. Well, so we didn't see much of that in the New Forest.
Well, I was lucky in London that, you know, we grew up on that stuff at really early doors from like 82.
You might see like a love heart etched into an oak tree or something, but not much like graffiti street art.
But so the Buffalo Girls, you absolutely loved that track. And
but before I loved Malcolm McLaren, I called my cat Malcolm when I was 11. I got this ginger
tabby.
I nearly said puppy, but kitten, and I named him Malcolm.
Really?
And yeah,
wow.
Because he was ginger and Malcolm McLaren was sort of ginger, and and I liked ages before I even saw the film, The Great Rock and Roll Swindle. I had the double album, and it wasn't all like 18-year-old speed freaks being angry on council estates. It was like classical music, disco, rock and roll, cabaret. It was sort of and I just thought, wow, you can just do whatever you want, and it all clicked for me. And I loved that Eddie Tenpole version of Rock Around the Clock on there, where it just went beep instead of rock around the clock. Instead of the word rock, it just had him doing this little squeak. And you know, later in life I've ended up becoming kind of friendly and doing some bits and bobs music for his movie and stuff, Malcolm's Son. I never ever met Malcolm McLaren, and I guess I never will unless we meet in the afterlife. And I did, worked on some music for a movie that Joe, his son, did, and it's sort of an honour to know him. And
we used to go in World's End on the New King's Road, and what an amazing shop that was, with the wonky floor and the clock that went backwards.
Incredible. That was the sort of epicentre of punk in the 70s.
Yeah, and a big RIP to Malcolm, and also Vivienne Westwood as well. I mean, another amazing talent.
We went to her memorial. I mean, I met her several times over the last 2 or 3 decades. She would never remember me each time. I guess her head was just in her creations. And
always thinking of the creative force.
She was quite unusual. You know, she would like travel. I played at one of her parties in Vienna, where I now live, but not connected to that. I ended up marrying an Austrian woman, and before that I played at one of Vivienne's things, and she was travelling on EasyJet. You know, she could have been. You know,
she was great. We used to see her riding her cycle around Clapham, just on her bike, just riding through the streets. So kind of down to earth, and you know, a real trailblazer. So when you sent the tape off, you was expecting not to hear back from anybody, and then suddenly a label got in touch with you and say, we really like this.
What it was this label called Fast Product, and I didn't know at the time, but it was ran by the manager of the Human League, Bob Last, and before the Human League were big pop stars, when they were more experimental and stuff, and their first album and stuff came out on this label. But they did this series of like EP compilations of things, and I really liked them. They were called Earcom. And on Earcom, I think, you know, they released the first Joy Division track. They only released about 12 things but they had the first DAF, Deutsch Amerikanisch Freundschaft German group, that very influential on techno. I was on the same EP as them. I didn't know about them unless I'd heard them on John Peel until I was on the same thing. But anyway, they had this Scottish band called the Pratts, who were like 15 or something, and I just thought, well, if they sign a 15-year-old band, they might. And I just sent it and thought, oh, you know, it's worth a shot. And I think I can't remember what I thought when I was 11, so long ago. And then, you know, I did get this letter. It's like getting a letter from Willy Wonka or
the Queen or something.
Yeah, it was like.
Could you believe it when you opened it? You're like, wow.
Yeah, well, yeah. Like, it was quite. I mean, super exciting. And
did you tell them that you were so young? You was 11 years old.
Well, they were like, "Is this for real?" Like, their first letter was like, "Are you really, or is this like a scam? You know, sort of art project?" Which I guess it was, but it wasn't someone pretending to be 11. I was 11, and I mean now. What I did then, if you told an 11-year-old or a teenager now, they'd be like, so what? Because you can make a track
on your iPhone.
Yeah, you could make a much better quality track than recording toy instruments onto leaning over a mono cassette recorder. Now you could, you know, on your phone, you could do a track and a video and have it all around the world
within minutes.
I mean, probably, I don't know how many months it took to get a reply, but basically what happened was, I mean, my beliefs are everything happens for a reason. I don't know what the fuck that reason is, and I'm maybe going to find out when I die. I don't know, but I just think everything happens for a reason, and that happened, and it was like I was 11, and then it was the summer holidays of 1979, and during that period John Peel played Gangsters by the Specials. I think Gary Newman had his 2 hits, was that year, like the big, like, game-changing hits, that Cars and Our Friends Electric, and all this stuff sort of happened. And then I went to secondary school, and it was, you know, there was it was quite scary. There was all kids from other villages that all came to this big school, and so I'd be scared of other kids, and sort of I bonded with the kids that were all into this two-tone thing, which was then. And then I feel like really blessed to have, I feel sort of culturally blessed to have gone to secondary school during that period of the first half of the 80s, when like it seemed like every month there was some new exciting thing, whether it was, you know, Susie and Budgie from the Banshees doing The Creatures. You know, I saw a clip from Top of the Pops, and that's like sort of mind-boggling avant-garde music on a tea time on a Thursday evening on mainstream TV. They just wouldn't do that now. That, you know, back in the 70s, they had people on Top of the Pops with like wonky teeth. And they just wouldn't get a record deal. They wouldn't get. It's, I don't know, but.
I mean, we've got to give it to Top of the Pops, because there was only really 3 channels back then: BBC One, BBC Two, and ITV. This is before Channel 4 and Channel 5.
Yeah.
So there was 3 stations. You had Top of the Pops was the main station to go to for all your you know, all your music.
And the old grey whistle test.
And the old grey whistle
sometimes
test.
I wasn't allowed to, because it was
a bit
on
later,
so
wasn't
late
it?
at night, I wasn't allowed to watch it.
It was slightly later.
And it wasn't, and then maybe they put a repeat on later in the week on an earlier slot, but it wasn't till the advent of like video VHS recorders that
so you couldn't tape it.
Tape
yeah,
it
you couldn't
and then
tape
watch it and see Devo and X-Ray Specs and you know what alternative music they call it. But I like mainstream, and I like John Peel in the Night with like really mental like throbbing Gristle or Daff or you know, things that maybe would have, my friends at school that I hung out with would have gone, it's not real music. But I also liked the mainstream stuff like Two Tone, but I mean when the Human League changed their whole personnel and started making more hooky pop songs, I mean I found their sort of more avant-garde weird stuff. I find it hooky. I love the melodies.
Fascination was wicked, wasn't it?
Yeah, but like before, when they started out, they had different people. Martin Ware, I can't remember, but they became Heaven 17 because they either left or got sacked from the Human League, which was actually their band, and all to do with this dude that signed me, who I didn't know, you know, I was 11, and but to answer your question of about half an hour ago, I got £100 between me and my brother was our advance for that record. My parents didn't know anything about the music biz, obviously. My dad was a horticulturalist. He grew chrysanthemums and sold them to the market. And my mother was a housewife. And they were like, my dad hated punk. He just hated it even more than the Teddy Boy I told you about. He just didn't get it and hated it. And so he didn't really know, but I guess he was quite proud when he realised. But they had to sign the contract because we were under 18, obviously, and they thought, wow, I hadn't, you know, £100 when you're 11 in 1979.
It's a lot of money.
I felt rich and bought a piano, which I'm really pleased. I could have spent it on Lego. I was an avid Lego fan. See, the thing is, I was sort of like, you know, punk rock spirited. I started smoking cigarettes when I was 11, became a chronic nicotine addict, which I still am. But I love the advent of vape, by the way. I think it's the greatest invention of the 21st century. If I had the choice between vape or AI music, I'd definitely go with the vape.
Go for the vape, yeah.
But I bought a piano, and like a friend of my brother's from Big School, this Canadian guy called Scott Brynan, he was a real sort of whiz with electronics, bought all the components from Maplin, which we don't have anymore, but some people...
Because Maplin and Tandy were the kind of go-to shops back then, weren't they?
Yeah, Maplin you could buy all the little knobs and plugs and cables and stuff, and based on the stylophone, which was a thing back in the 70s, really irritating.
Yeah, do you remember that
David Bowie played on Space Oddity. But he made me a sort of, out of this £100 too, that was like half for my brother. I mean, I think the piano was both of ours, but whatever. I taught myself because the teacher said I'm unteachable because I wouldn't do the daily practice of, you know, like learning these cheesy little like chopsticks and stuff. I just couldn't be bothered, and I just learned to play the chords of My Girl by Madness and things like this, and or two-tone. So that two-tone thing happening right then in my life, when I could afford to buy a piano and try and play along.
That was one of the pivotal moments.
Yeah, but I've had loads of pivotal, like, I love music, I'm so passionate about it, but I'm thinking, like, would like other life forms on another planet, would they have music? I
think so. You've only got to watch films like Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Yeah.
And when it
with the tuba noise. Yeah. I mean,
so music is a way to connect you. You don't have to speak a language. You know, music is the universal language.
I just read a book talking about it called The World in 6 Songs, and by Danielle, sorry Danielle, I misgendered you.
Daniel.
Not that he's going to watch me, maybe he will, but I really enjoyed the book called The World in 6 Songs, and the whole thing is about the evolution of language and music and culture, and how much music made language evolve and vice versa, and like, going right back to like Neanderthals or troglodytes. It just, I really love history, which is, I hated it at school, probably because we had to learn about Robert what's name, like inventing the steamroller of fucking Romans. But I quite like the Romans now, but I just hated all that at school. But I love history now, and especially music history, because it's something I'm interested in. I love reading about artists I like, how they approached something in the studio, where they got their inspiration, what gadgets they used. Like, I've just read the biography of J Dilla, and learning about more in depth the evolution of hip-hop culture, but also the evolution of music technology, and the Roger Lynn inventing the first drum machine. The first drum machine you could... No, was it? Was it Roland? I don't know. He bought bits off Roland to develop his own thing, which I learned that the clap sound in a Lynn drum machine is a sample of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers.
Is it
Roger
really?
Lynn going, right, 1, 2, 3, and then clapping.
Really?
So
wow.
Yeah, and it's a book about J Dilla and his.
I need to get that.
It's a mate called Dilla Time.
Wow.
And it's so well written, but it's so good because it's his biography as a person. His family and education and thoughts and difficulties and all this, and how he came to be making music. He's from a very musical family. His dad was a jazz double bass player, and
he's an absolute legend.
But how he manipulated samples and stuff, and I might try and do that. I didn't have that technology for me. I learned the keyboard and drum machine that I became well known for using.
Was that the TR-909? Or?
Yeah, the 909. And I bought that off my big brother as well. This big brother that keeps getting mentioned. I bought that off him, and learned how to program that, and I bought this Ensoniq synth sequencer thing, which Jimmy Polo from Chicago, who was from around the early house music scene in Chicago with, you know, the pioneers, Adonis and Marshall Jefferson and Frankie Knuckles, and, you know, they were all Jimmy's mates, and somehow or another we ended up living above a kebab shop opposite Camden Palace.
Really?
And
wow.
we knew the head bar. She lived downstairs, Jeanette. She was like the head bar staff, the chief bartender or whatever. We could always get into Camden Palace and have free drinks. and Jimmy taught me how to use this sequencer and taught me a few jazz chords, which I didn't know, you know.
You must have been like a little kid in a sweet shop, Adam. You must have been like totally lost in this musical space, trying to like come up with this, you know, these tracks.
Well, I wasn't really you know, I have ADHD, like really next level, and I didn't know this till a couple of years ago, because now more adults are getting diagnosed. The psychiatrist was nearly crying visibly that this hadn't been spotted, and it all made so much sense.
So much sense, yeah.
Because at school I thought I'm sort of a rebel or something, I'm punk, you know. But I didn't want to not learn. I didn't want to be. I just could not focus anyway. So with drum machines and synthesizers and stuff, like manuals, I actually get palpitations. That even if I get a new phone, and just the little manual in the box
It freaks you out.
Yeah, it's like
I can't do it.
It's
I'm
like,
the same. I can't do it.
It's like holding a note from, like, I don't know, the Cray twins saying you're a marked man. We're gonna. I'm like actually petrified, but somehow. My brother showed me how to use the 909, which is fair enough because I bought it off him for probably 150 quid or something. They're worth about $8,000 now.
Are they really?
Well,
wow.
A ridiculous amount of money. And
well, then you was just like literally practicing until you kind of taught yourself properly.
The music that got me known wasn't meant for that. I was just basically building grooves, beats and melodic ideas, chords and stuff, which I thought, you know, eventually not anyone else, is going to sing songs on these, you know. I'm not like a super rated singer, but I like doing it, you know. I just have to do what I like doing. It didn't really help my career when I tried to follow up the song with Seal, who was probably or maybe is one of the best singers in the world, you know, like tried to follow that up with me singing an Elvis song. Wasn't my best professional idea, but and people didn't really like my singing, but I like doing it.
Listen, what? That's all that matters. If you enjoyed doing it, then do it.
That music, like, so I'd learned how to use this synth off my bedsit neighbour Jimmy Polo, and I learned how to use the drum machine off my brother, who was part of, you know, he couldn't sell me something and not show me, and it wasn't as difficult as I thought. And then I was just making stuff that I thought was sort of foundations of like something else, and I was like, all sorts of things were going into it. Like, I'd have a bass line from the Dead Kennedy, and then I'd play some jazz chords which I'd just been learning from Jimmy on it, and then I put, you know, strings that were maybe influenced by craft work or something, you know, European-y, and bits and bobs, you know, copy a bit of Detroit tech, not copy, but emulate, you know, try and do something similar, like an AI prompt to myself. But I'm not artificially intelligent. I am sort of an idiot, and I just was making stuff. And then my manager, he had a restaurant in Kentish Town, and like,
who's that? Phil Smith.
Yeah, and he had a couscous restaurant where he started managing the band I was in before I became ADAMSKI, which I was one of the singers. My brother made the beats. Well, we all sort of made them, but he actually operated the drum machines and samplers and stuff. The 909 was we were called Discord Daccord, and it was sort of like electro clash. I mean, we were sort of a cross between the Beastie Boys and Zig Zig Sputnik. And if you'd ever seen us perform and I said that, you would say, yeah, we were like obnoxious, confrontational, like two singers and a guy with a drum machine and sampler and bits and bobs, and we'd like get people really, really upset. Like I said, in the 80s, people, that's not real music, because we didn't have any sort of big carved lumps of wood hanging around our necks, and it was just noise. But it was, we played at like Mutoid Waste parties, and we played in Phil's restaurant, take out all the tables and have a little do in there. But he said, you know, come and play after the pub. We used to go to this pub in Camden called the Devonshire Arms, which was sort of where the goths and psychobillies and post-punk sort of people hung out in Camden. And after the pub, he said, just bring the keyboard and the 909, just put it on the table in the restaurant
and have a jam.
Yeah, and then I did this gig there one Friday night, like after, I don't know what time, but there was a old Irish guy from the pub playing a penny whistle over my sort of techno, or whatever you would call it. And then Phil, just this guy that was promoting an all-dayer at Heaven on the Sunday.
Was that Lenny D?
Yeah.
Do
you know him?
No, but I've researched his story.
Okay.
And he was passing by, innit?
He just happened to be passing by, and Phil, being a sort of eccentric, odd guy, for some reason, his restaurant was opposite McDonald's, and he used to project things onto McDonald's wall.
Oh, really?
From the top the flat above the restaurant, with a projector, and he projected a spaceman or something, like astro cosmic, onto McDonald's wall. And this guy Lenny D, who was promoting this all-dayer at Heaven, just happened to walk past and was intrigued by what the fuck's that doing, and then sort of looked up and saw the beam from the project, and he went into the restaurant to investigate, like, and then, why is someone, and then got talking to Phil and said, oh, you know, he's doing this all-dayer at Heaven. This was March the 31st, 1989. And Phil said, oh, I've got an act for you, and convinced this guy, Lenny D, to let me go and play at Heaven on the Sunday, 2 days, or the next day. No, it was a Sunday though.
Can you remember what the night was, the day the all-dayer was called?
No, I used to have the T-shirt, and I wish I did. I think his parties that he did, which I can't remember if I went to or not, were called Unit something, because they were on an industrial estate, and that was Unit 19, or I don't remember, but they were sort of like really underground, you know, like the seeds of the rave scene, 88, 89, and he did those, and but I can't remember what this thing at Heaven was called. But
so when you turned up to Heaven,
yeah, well,
was that the first time you'd been to Heaven?
No.
Oh, so you'd already been there?
Yeah, I used to go to. I unfortunately I didn't go to Spectrum
or Land of Oz.
Yeah, Land of Oz. I think I made it, but I didn't go to those sort of like culturally significant. You know, like I didn't go to Shoom until I played there. I'd heard about it, but it was sort of. I felt like a right outsider of all that. I went more to gay club. I'd go to Heaven when it was more like regular Heaven, but on Wednesday night it was called Pyramid, and they started to play house tunes. Delirium I went to.
Did you really? What, Astoria?
No, when it was in Heaven.
Right.
Which maybe, I don't know, because those things shifted around.
Yeah,
those sort of clubs.
Delirium was amazing. I went to Delirium as well. It was great, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was Rachel Orban, I think, who I didn't know at the time, but then I got to know her, and she was the DJ at Trade, or one of them. But I go more to the gay things. I was more comfortable in that sort of scenario than. To be honest, I was like 20 when I went and played in Heaven, or 19, or I'd sort of tolerate the music, just waiting for them to play something like Baby Ford, or like, you know, early house tunes, and you know, Adonis, No Way Back, and things like that, but would be being played, but sort of a bit, not as the whole sort of. And I just, you know, I did go to Ibiza that 88, like, went to Amnesia, which I thought was the best club I'd ever been to in my life. I mean, I was...
So, yeah, Ibiza, what an amazing place with incredible clubs, incredible music. So what did you think of Ibiza when you first went there?
Well, again, it was like, all these things have sort of happened to me by... serendipity and stuff. Like, I don't know if I'd even ever heard of Ibiza. I've been to Tenerife when I was a kid with my family, you know, like, you know, I sort of knew that Spanish islands, I don't know, but my mate's boyfriend was from Birmingham, and I went with my mate and his boyfriend. My mate, who was the other singer in my pre-ADAMSKI thing, Johnny Slut, his name was and still is. He's still a DJ here around town here and there. And he launched that club Nag Nag Nag, which was like the first sort of London electro clash thing, which was really exciting. That was a bit like acid house meets punk rock on the dance floor in Nag Nag Nag. It was amazing. It was the last time I was really excited by club culture. And then MySpace came out, which was really exciting too, but then it went so social media that nothing could develop organically. Like that was probably the last gasp of the old way of doing things, and word of mouth, and, you know, things building organically. Because I played at the first Nag Nag Nag, and there was 13 people there, and the toilet was blocked, and there was a sort of pool of piss across the dance floor. And then it moved venue, and I played at the first one there, and it was like 50 people. And then a few weeks later there was queues around the block, and it was like Kate Moss and Bjork and Cilla Black and the Pet Shop Boys and Yoko Ono, and all these people going, and Wolfgang Tillmans and Chris Cunningham, and all these like you know, but went from this like thing with 13 people and like a puddle of urine
to all these like kind of A-listers.
Yeah, so but then then since then I am maybe I'm just too old to connect. I haven't come across anything as exciting as that. But back to that, so Johnny Slut and his boyfriend said, oh, do you want to come on holiday with us? And I was on the dole, apart from I worked in Phil's restaurant cleaning tables and stuff in the morning and cutting up vegetables for the couscous. So, which was, I couldn't afford to get in a cab for a start. And I wouldn't, travelling by cab was another world for me. And then, but I managed to get the money together to go on a cheap flight to Ibiza. I didn't have a hotel because I couldn't afford it. And I thought, well, I'll just sleep in Johnny and John's room. And I don't know why, but because Johnny's boyfriend, was from Birmingham, we went from Birmingham to Ibiza and with some other people from Birmingham who'd already been there, and they sort of got the acid house bug. And it then just sort of I was just going on a sunshine holiday with my mates, which was exciting enough as it was. And then I sort of read in a couple of magazines or something that there's these amazing clubs there that play acid house and stuff affiliated and mixed in with acid house, and I thought, oh great, because mostly, if I heard acid house, it would be in some dingy club in London with I don't cigarette. I don't know. I'm not. I like dingy clubs full of cigarette smoke, but these clubs are more glammed up, weren't they? Open air, dancing when the sun comes up and stuff. It was
with water shows and and foam coming out.
I've never been to a foam party, weirdly, because I've been to hundreds of thousands of parties, but I've somehow never been to a foam one. Looks fun, but I'm like, whatever.
I think it was at Es Paradis and
I've been to Es Paradis loads of times. I think last time I played in Ibiza was even there.
And there was that other massive club, I think it was called Coup, which was opposite, pretty much on the same side as Amnesia.
Yeah.
And Coup had that massive swimming pool. Yeah. It had a huge swimming pool inside.
It was open air, and Amnesia and Coup were closed for the summer of 1990 because they had to put roofs on. Because the local people were sick of all that noise all night.
And also people were bunking over the walls to getting into the club.
To get into Amnesia on the opening night in '88, basically we just turned up dressed up.
And they were
like, oh, they must have just thought, wow, cool, funny people from London, and just, come in. Now, to get into the opening of a club in Ibiza, you need to go through all computer checks and photo ID and all this hassle and metal detectors. Then it was more the sort of ruralness of it. I grew up in the New Forest, and there's sort of cottages dotted about and things with wonky walls, and it was just like going into a beautiful garden with a lot of people from the sort of New York gay scene, sort of people that would be the crowd that went to Studio 54 and stuff, Paradise Garage. I'd probably never even heard of those places back then. But these people that I just found, like when I came to London from the New Forest when I was a kid, it was kind of the next level.
It's
like
a big eye
seeing the
opener.
New York people and the real club culture, and you know, and they would, not amnesia but passion, like would employ these beautiful
models,
dancing on podiums, and they'd be from all over the world, from like I don't know, Brazil or Ukraine or all sorts of, you know, exotic, far off places which I never, you know, dreamt I'd ever go.
And space as well, like
space started in '89. And it used to be beanbags and like 100 people, literally, like the real die-hard people like myself, that would just carry on taking chemicals till they just died or something. I'm not dead, which I find just as weird as that I ended up playing at the opening party of Amnesia in '89. So all this stuff, I was just making backing tracks for myself, and then Phil got me this gig in Heaven, and I didn't even have a keyboard stand. I just had my gear on the stage, on the ground.
Really?
And
so you had to kneel down and then...
Yeah, I was kneeling on the floor.
Wow.
And people sort of stepping over and going, "What are you doing?" like, because, you know, the stage wasn't being used as a stage per se. They didn't clear it off and say, "We've got ADAMSKI now," or whatever.
They just let you set up and get on with it.
I was plugged into where, and I was playing, and it went off, and people were going nuts. And I was like, "Really? To this? These half-finished things?" And then I was so off my head that I lost the floppy disk. With all the music that, well, not all of it, because half of it hadn't made yet, but like a lot of the music that ended up on my first album, the music that I was started playing around Britain and Ibiza initially. You know, I lost the floppy disk, and I was going around.
Did you have a
looking
copy?
for this
Do you have a
floppy
copy of the floppy disk?
No.
You're joking.
And I found it on the floor in the Star Bar, which was the upstairs bit where it was a bit more quiet and you could sit down and have a chat. But it was still packed, nevertheless. Like, it was 1989, it was just packed with people dancing, like, but proper, uninhibited fucking joy.
Going
like,
for it.
People, like, exalted and just like, it was like that everywhere. And so I found this floppy disk with all, like, you know, Nike footprints on it and, you know, spillage, and luckily it still worked. And then this guy Lenny D said, "Look, it's my birthday today and I've hired a boat going from Charing Cross Pier, which is like a minute's walk from Heaven. Come and play on my boat." And I was like, I was up for anything. I was like, "Yeah, all right then." So I went and played on his boat, and because he was a promoter that sort of, you know, was in the sort of circle of people doing stuff, he had all the maid sort of, they were all his mates, associates, like the promoter Tony Colston Hayter. I think he was there. To be honest, I can't remember any of it. I can't remember playing, but I've seen some photos. But it was all like Fabio and Groove Rider.
Really? Wow.
Anton and Jeremy and Tintin, and who did Energy. All these people were Lenny D's mates, and they were all in his birthday party. And I played, and they just started. I think Mr. C, who you've had in here, I know. He had a club called Coos in Tottenham on Friday nights, like a residency thing he did every Friday. He said, "Come and play at Coos." Yeah, he must have been on that boat too. And I just started getting bookings, So I literally, well, I'm not bragging, by the way, I'm just telling my story. I don't know why this has happened to me, but the only thing that I know has helped is that I've just been passionate about music.
So was that like another pivotal moment of being on that boat with all those kind of, you know, legends?
Like I said, Steve, I honestly don't remember. You know, I used to take pills and drink, which no one else really. They were like, "What are you drinking for?" You know, they were all happy on pills, but I'm one of those kind of people that just needs a little bit more, and I had a bag of special brew, and you know,
and that is
Bad Manners.
It's called Special Brew for a reason.
Yeah, Bad Manners, who were kind of connected to the two-tone scene that I was talking about earlier, which is what I taught myself to play. They even had a tune, like a love song to Special Brew. I love you, yes I do, because I know that you love me too. And that was on mainstream tea time TV too. That's the thing, in the 80s you'd have like Bad Manners or Susie and the Banshees, or that da 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 with the little Casio beat, or Ian Dury did a Christmas song with the Casio, the same little, you know, it was all just so random and mental and brave that, you know, and
so new and fresh.
Yeah, everything was like, people were more adventurous. It's weird now because people have got way more tools to be way more adventurous than anyone could be like 30-40 years ago. It just, then it was all, everything was new and exciting.
Well, it was growing, wasn't it? Because you had like, you sort of your punk and all that kind of scene, your new romantics. Then you had like your early rap music, which turned into like hip hop. Then you had early house music. Then house music branched off. You had like happy house. You had hardcore house. You had like drum and bass jungle, and it was all kind of branching and going off into different directions. It was incredible. Going back to your track NRG, you know, what an absolute belter that was. I mean, when did that come out? It must have been what, like 89, late 89?
It came out in 89, and I think I made it in the middle of that summer when
when you just got back from Ibiza?
No, well, I went. There was 88. I didn't even have I was still in Discord Datcord, my sort of electro punk whatever we were band. And then, you know, Jimmy Polo moved into the bed sit next door, and he was playing Confusion in, is it Greek Street, I think, and playing at things, and he was introducing me to people like Robert Owens, and Adonis was standing in my bedsit playing on my keyboard, and I'm like, a year ago Adonis was like this, it was like as if Jesus Christ had walked into my bedsit and made me like a fish and bread thing. It was like, what is this happening? But anyway, all so sweet people, you know. I'd be sort of so scared. Oh, Americans from the ghetto or something, and I'm from the New Forest, and my dad grows chrysanthemums. Like,
so what was the idea behind
Energy? Yeah, sorry.
And you called it NRG.
Well, that was because it's a bit pathetic, but I was only 21 and like a bit like drug addled and sort of mood swings, you know, bipolar disorder, which I didn't know I had then, but that mixed with taking a lot of uppy things like E, and then alcohol, a lot of alcohol, which is a depressant. So I was up and down and all over the place. Plus, what's going on? I've gone from sweeping up and cleaning tables in a restaurant and making stuff in my bedsit. In 6 months from that, I had like a big major record deal, I was being sort of schmoozed by the Pet Shop Boys, and sort of Boy George, he became a mate like of mine. I mean, I met him didn't really meet him in 1988, when the only trainers you could get were white or black, maybe. And I remember walking all around the West End looking for anything but fucking white trainers. And then I saw Boy George in Heaven with purple and orange Adidas.
Wow.
High tops. So it wasn't because he was a pop star or something, and I wanted to sort of, get in there with the pop. I just had to know where he got his training. I was like, where did you get your training? He was like, oh, New York. Oh, well, I'm never going to ever go to New York. But then, weirdly, yeah, I've been to New York like, I don't know, tons of times. But then I did all this stuff like New York or like South America or everything was just like, no, Australia, I thought I'm just going to be making whatever beats in a bed sit above a kebab shop. I don't know, low self-esteem. But anyway, I made NRG like energised, for want of a better word, by that whole thing that I got. So suddenly I was in like the midst of all this growing culture, rave culture and stuff, and I did. It's very much like I'm pretty sure that Brian Eno would approve of the way I made Energy. I thought, I'm just going to shut my eyes, put the sequence, like the synth was like you can record in your things and like loop them, not samples. You have to play stuff, like my piano bits. I sort of played them in, and then you can loop them, and that's what all that music was, me playing things in. But for NRG, I just thought, Energy, I just shut my eyes. I put the thing in record, just shut my eyes and just played some random notes. And that's what, like loads more. And there was that bar. So it was just totally and I made the sound out of taking like a preset saxophone or something, and just because I actually didn't know what I was doing, I don't know about like LFO and synthesis and like geeky stuff, but I would just try and do stuff that wouldn't be in the manual, like you're not supposed to do. That's how I ended up with a lot of those sounds. I just experiment, play around, just for hours and hours until
you found that one.
Yeah. And I just so that thing was just so random, and then people just loved that. Got the biggest reaction. I had it by the time I played the opening of Amnesia in '89, which must have been May or June, beginning of June. So, but I don't think I had that in the boat party at the end of March. So,
opening night like at Amnesia, is that when they put the roof on? And then
no, this was the year before the roof.
Right,
it was still open in '89. Well, it was even Alfredo, the DJ, who was the resident DJ. Always for years in Amnesia, he said big shout out to Alfredo, the best party ever.
And you played your track there live?
I played a set. I did a live set with my synth and drum machine, and I smashed it.
Wow.
If you find anyone that was there, they'd have to agree.
Have you got a recording of that?
No. I played there throughout that summer. I also played the closing night, and a few random nights in between, I was going backwards and forwards. I mean, how you couldn't. It was so exciting going backwards and forwards from. I still thought it was the best club in the world, and then playing at the first open air rave, which was Biology, and playing at NRG, the first NRG party.
Wow.
In the film studio.
What was that like?
It was just amazing. I had some of these things on video, but the videos got lost, and there's not really any, apart from myself, would like to see me playing, you know, for like to show my kids or to whatever, to feel a sense of
that must have been an incredible
something.
Must have been an incredible moment.
Yeah.
Planning, because them energy dudes were massive, weren't they?
Yeah, it was
huge.
And then Energy 2, which was in an aircraft hangar, and Sunrise 5000. That gig I got through playing on the boat party, and all this kind of stuff, and just going backwards and forwards, doing these massive, you know, things that changed like British society, and now still having a global knock-on effect. You know, raving is still a thing around the world, I think, is it?
Yeah, it's still going, it's
South
still
America
living strong.
Or Croatia or wherever, people love it, and being like really involved in the birth of that, and backwards and forwards from Ibiza, and it was really exciting. But I always had this imposter syndrome and thinking, why these tracks aren't even finished? But then I've sort of sometimes I had an MC, Daddy Chester. I'll get on to the other thing that I know you're going to ask me about. Daddy Chester was also my flatmate. Is that how you hooked up with Daddy Chester? Well, no, I knew him when I lived above the kebab shop in Camden High Street. He lived just round the corner in Crowndale Road. Yeah. And he was just a really bubbly, happy guy that would just stop and chat with everyone. And I got to know him. And I was still doing Discord Daccord, the electro clash. We were like electro clash, but before, like 20 years before, or 10 years, whatever. And he came and was toasting, which is what they used to call MCing, or Jamaican style MCing, which was really like incongruous in itself, because we were like I said, like the Beastie Boys meet Zig Zig Sputnik, and then we had like this sort of
reggae toaster.
Yeah, reggae toaster over it, and it, you know, and he did a couple of gigs with us, and he just became my mate. And then when I started playing at these raves and stuff, I was still living above the kebab shop, and he was still living in Crowndale Road, round the corner with his mum. And then he just started coming and MCing for me sometimes. Like, he didn't come to Ibiza with me because he realised, like, the day before we left, that he didn't have a passport, and sort of things like that. You know, he might have ADHD as well. I mean, I'm amazed that I can even just go out to buy a loaf of bread sometimes. It actually gets quite complicated, but.
No, you're doing amazing.
But then when I got more money, I got a little flat in York Way, and he was my flatmate and sometime MC. We used to go to Clapham Common after big raves. There'd be a sort of after party on Clapham Common on Sunday morning, 8 PM Sunday morning, which grew from like a couple of hundred people or less to the whole of Clapham Common being covered in trucks within weeks. And I didn't really like that, so he'd gone to that, and the guy had approached him, which was Seal, and said, look, I want to be his singer, can you give him this cassette? Because someone must have said, look, Daddy Chester's Adam's flatmate or MC, or, well, he was both, and can you give him this cassette? And by this point I wasn't looking for a singer, or I was still sort of plucking up the courage to do it myself. I did have a pop at the closing party of Amnesia. I sang a little bit, and Mr. C was there, and I felt a bit embarrassed to trying to, because he was like rapping at Coos in Tottenham, rapping over his DJ sets.
That's right.
And he was like really good.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh God, he's going to think I'm a twat. And now I come to think of it, also I did a gig in Heaven in '89 at one of Paul Oakenfold's nights. I think, what was it? Rage was Fabian Groove, right? Monday night, that was Land of Oz.
Land of Oz.
But I played there, and I remember singing a couple of songs, and because he was going to sign me to his record label, but there was a bit of a bidding war going on. It was all so surreal, like bidding war. That's like for the Sex Pistols. I'm just this bloke like that's half learned to like use a synthesizer and a drum machine, but I guess
when Seal gave you the tape, what was on the tape?
A demo version of Crazy, and another song that I can't remember, but I just.
What did you think? What did you think when you heard it? You must have been pretty much blown away.
I thought that's a really great voice, plus the production of Crazy was quite it was just like, wow, that's really great programming, which was Guy Sigsworth and another DJ called Mark Albach, before Trevor Horn took it and got all the credit for their ideas. I heard it and I was like, I'm not looking for a singer now. Look, I'm getting booked to play several times a week, and then I started being invited to go and play at the Hacienda in Manchester and Underground in Liverpool, which was what evolved into Cream, what evolved into, it's like a corporation or something now, putting on events all over the world. And I'd started getting to and things, Sub Club in Glasgow, and like all these things happening around the country. I'd never been north of Watford till I went to Birmingham to go to Ibiza in 1988. So I thought, wow, that's a really amazing voice and everything. And I was sort of like, but then I met Seal called Solaris, which was my favourite club in '89.
Where was that?
That was on Gray's Inn Road. I have a few favourite clubs. I also became good friends with the DJ Aaron of Solaris, who really sadly passed away about 3 weeks ago.
R.I.P. Yeah.
I don't know why it's like rude to say he died or something, isn't it? My dad died last year. I don't know why people say. It's this sort of protocol thing. You say he passed away, he died, but it means the same thing, or maybe I don't know. But
so Seal come to the club.
Seal, that was Seal's regular club too,
right? And
it was just great club on a Sunday evening. It probably closed at midnight, with all the poxy licensing laws that we had or have. Still probably. Seal used to frequent that club, and we just were hanging out, and I liked his voice. I probably said, oh, I love your voice. And then one day I was recording, the record label sent me into the studio to come up with what would be my follow-up to NRG, I think, or to just go in there and record demos. And I said to Seal, oh, just come round and have a pop, pick a track. And he went, oh, I really like that one. And that one had been resonating with people more.
Was that Killer?
Others. Yeah.
Because you'd already made Killer.
Yeah, I made it.
You'd already made it,
can, on YouTube, there's me playing it at Hacienda probably before I'd ever met Seal. But, so it was this tune that was having there was something about it that was people liked connecting with, and he picked that one, and he tried this song that he already had for something else, which, you know, the lyrics of Killer are like stock lyrics of club music in the late 80s, like the new club music that was pretty much just singing about freedom and brothers and sisters, and
that's right.
It was and I said, look, I just want to try and make this more have a sort of rocky Led Zeppelin sort of vibe. Like Led Zeppelin was my prompt to Seal for how he would sing, and there was no chorus, there was no solitary brother, solitary sister bit. The A&R man at the record label, because for me, I was into a lot of instrumental music at the time, like Detroit techno and stuff. I didn't need to hear a like catchy Postman to whistle along to chorus. I didn't give a shit, you know, but it was enough for me, like sounds just. But the A&R man, being a major record company, said, no, you've got to have a chorus or they won't play it on like Radio 1 or something. And Seal went away and came back with that, and the A&R man was a sweet guy, and he died as well, passed away about 10 years, more than 10 years ago, Paul Doggett, and he was fun, and he used to come to the raves, and he knew more what was going on than most A&R men in a big corporate record company. He knew what was happening on the underground, and he was good fun.
What was it like working in the studio with Seal? I mean, it must have been an experience.
Yeah, it was. It didn't actually take that long. The music didn't take me long. Like NRG, like I didn't shut my, you know, I was just messing around, and I just came up with all the elements of Killer in like what feels like 15 minutes, but I have a very poor perception of time. It might have been 3 hours. Like everyone, I think, that makes music, you know, gets lost in it and loses all concept of time. I was
going to say as well, Adam, who designed the cover for that as well? Because you got like, is it like a Jack Russell or something?
That was my dog.
Was that your dog?
Yeah.
Wow.
She used to come on stage with Discord Daccord, which I know is like, you shouldn't be exposing a small dog to that loud music, but she would come on the stage and just have a kip on the stage.
No,
while
really?
we were,
wow.
I mean, it was mental what we were doing. Sometimes, you know, we'd have people throwing pint glasses at us, and a gig in Hackney once, someone actually swang a chair at my head because they were just so annoyed that we'd have, you know, this sort of Mantronics beat with samples of Dame Edna on it and cover versions of the Runaways and X-Ray Specs, but electronic with no guitars, or if the guitar was on there, it would be done in a sort of irreverent, sampled and sped up. And I can play guitar, I'm alright at guitar, but I much prefer like sampling bits. I sample bits off YouTube tutorials of like bits of, you know, and then just chop them all up into tiny pieces and fuck it all up. That's the sort of thing I do. I don't think I'm going to grow out of it very soon. I'm like 56 and I've still got the same sort of mentality and approach to music that I had when I was 11.
Well, this is going to be kind of what my end question to you. I mean, what does, you know, making music and being creative, what does that mean to you, Adam? I mean, that must mean the world to you when you're sitting there, you're making the music, you're making the beats, and you're playing around on the synthesizer.
Yeah. Well, I do often wonder, why am I doing it? What's it for? Like for instance, I'm doing this interview because I said I would. I'm not like, I haven't been put on some sort of PR promo sort of thing by a record company. I haven't got a record coming out. My wife puts some posts on Instagram for me because I really can't be arsed. I'm not trying to sell myself. I guess it comes across like I like talking about myself. I like remembering the things that I've enjoyed and achieved. Like, who doesn't? You know, it might be an angler sitting here with a big trout, and they're proud of that. No. I don't understand it. I don't get it. No, scientists still do not know why music affects humans in the way it does. And all that AI furore that's going on now about, well, AI is just going to replace all these people, and it's like, well, just fucking up your game then, because all it's doing is what you do anyway. It takes stock sounds, stock riffs, things that you think are going to work on the radio or whatever, or, you know, sound good in the festival, and everyone's going to hold their phone up. Just like be more creative. You can be more creative than a load of algorithms and whatever it is in there. I don't know. I chat with the chat box thing, and my wife was laughing because I was in the bath. I was having a massive row with the chat box. I'm getting really worked up, and it's just a fucking box of wires.
Brilliant.
And the other day I said, "Do you have a gender?" And they're like, "No, we're an automated database that wants to provide you with information." I'm like, yeah, but if you could think about yourself with machine learning, you're supposed to be becoming more human. Like, then what gender would you consider? And it was just, I think I wasted a couple of hours of the afternoon.
Any big highlights through your career so far?
I'll tell you, I'm more proud of the Stupid Babies that I did in 79 when I was 11 than I am of Killer that I did in 89. Well, the music 89, the song 90, when which became a big hit and stuff, and really covered by, probably, I don't know, it must be of that, you know, genre it's lumped in with, of club music, which it's not really, like, it's not house and it's not techno, and what is it? I don't know, but it's been covered more than anything, I think. I haven't actually researched it, but there's about 15 cover versions of known artists, you know, all sorts of known artists, like indie bands. I've forgotten the name. Scottish indie bands, and George Michael and various people. But I'm more proud of making a track on a Tesco cassette recorder with my 5-year-old brother. But the trajectory of my life, and, you know, I've done a lot of things since Killer. That's like 35 years. I've lived in a few different countries and learnt languages and learnt about other stuff, and, you know, I've got adult, grown, beautiful young women, daughters, and now I live in Vienna, which is the city of music, which, you know, Mozart and Beethoven and Schubert and all those dudes. Beautiful architecture and beautiful decor inside buildings, theatres and that sort of thing. Anyway, I lived there, and I don't know what it all means. I just love doing it, and I have to do it. People did like my music. It wasn't all just hype and things, smoke and mirrors and a style, you know. I know I've dressed like a dog's dinner a lot of the time, but I didn't have a stylist, you know.
Oh, you look great. I mean, look at you with the old, and especially look with the gazelles on now.
Ah, well, I like things.
I mean, you look absolutely great.
I like sartorical things, and I have since I was a little kid. I told you about the teddy boy in a pink drape suit.
Yeah.
I just, but you know, back then it was like okay, I'll sing an Elvis song to follow up my massive hit with this amazing singer. I'll have a crack at that with an Elvis song. Everyone hated Elvis probably in the rave scene as well. It was almost like self-sabotage probably. I had great singers queuing up, famous ones and up-and-coming ones, you know. With that, you know, obviously it opened doors for me, and I could have chosen someone truly amazing, you know, like, but I decided to do an Elvis song. Probably, you know, had a few lines too many, and just thought, oh, that's a good idea. But yeah, and they let me.
ADAMSKI, listen, you've had an absolutely incredible life. It's an absolute honour to have you in the back of this cab as well. You know, I mean, I'm sure people watching this, you know, cab chat with you in the back, you're such a down-to-earth guy. As you say, you know, you're not promoting a track. You know, it's just fantastic having a conversation with you.
Well, I like to, if I say I'm going to do something, I really try. Sometimes I fail. I'm human. But if I say I'll do something, I'll do it. And,
I hope you kind of enjoyed this little cab chat as well.
Yeah, it's been fun, and I like, like I said, it's being a bit nostalgic and think, oh yeah, I did that, and nice. And I'm not selling anything. Yeah, that's good. I don't care. I just go with whatever comes my way.
Well, it's like me with this channel. You know, but I just enjoy doing it. It's a hobby. I've been doing it for nearly 10 years now, and I just love doing it. And, you know, I get the chance to speak to, you know, creative, you know, great people like yourself. I mean, it's incredible. You know, I've interviewed Mr. C and Public Enemy and Ultramagnetic MCs. Jay Strongman, Brandon Block. I mean, you know, there's so many.
What, you have Public Enemy in here?
Yeah, Chuck D.
Wow.
Chuck D and his brother, yeah.
Wow.
And James from the S1Ws.
That gig in Olympic Studios that was just for 100 people, because my friend was the warm-up DJ for some reason, and she took me as her guest, because I think it was really expensive, and there was like Liam Gallagher and people. I remember
it. Yeah, I think it was over in Chiswick.
But I found, personally, like back to what I started talking about, they had like drums and guitars, and it was like what they did in the 80s was revolutionary. Putting on a show with just, you know, those bodyguard guys, and
S1Ws,
a DJ and rappers.
But Adam, listen, it's been an absolute honour having you in the back of the cab.
Well,
and listen, I truly, you know, take my hat off to you, you know, absolute legend. Now we're going to get you back home, back in London.
Oh, you're going to get me home. I'm glad you haven't had the meter running for these 2 hours.
Well, I thought you was going to say, can you take me to Vienna? I was going to say, that'll be the fare of a lifetime.
I would be pushing my luck. No, I'd go to Vienna back tomorrow from Gatwick.
No, I know you do.
The regular way.
But listen, my man, it's an absolute honour. All right, ADAMSKI?
Thank you.
Listen, it's been great.
Thanks, Steve.
No worries,
thanks for asking me.
It's been fantastic.
Yeah, oh, good. I mean, I'm glad you liked it.
No, you're brilliant.
Yeah,
you're a star.